In the last video, we saw how to write methods that do not return anything. They were void methods. So we always had public static void before the method name. Now we want to start writing methods that actually return something to us. Those are called value returning methods. Just like math.pow returns something to us, keyboard.nextLine returns a string to us, keyboard.nextByte returns a byte to us. We want to write our own methods that return something to the caller. So here is an example of a method that is a value returning method. The method is called add. It takes 2 ints as input, and the purpose of this method is to add up those 2 ints and give us back the sum of them, the answer. And so here, after public static, we would put that the return type is int, because if you add 2 ints, you're going to get an int back. So that's the first thing. You have to put the return type and the header when you're defining the method. The next thing you have to do is make sure that the method has a return line that has the answer. So here, because I'm returning an int, I have to say return something that is actually an int. Okay? So let's look at an example that we write ourselves. Let's here write public static int. Let's say, let's just do it. Use the same one. Int A, int B. Okay. And I can do 2 things. I can just say int, like let's say x equal to a plus b, and return x. Okay. Or I could have done it all on 1 line. So here I'm doing it on 2 lines. Instead, I do it on 1 line. So instead of doing it like this, creating a variable x, saving the answer in, and then returning the variable, I can just return a plus b. This will be the same. It's going to calculate a plus b first, and then it's going to return the value. Now, how do I call this method that is returning a value? Well, again, anytime you want to call a method, you put the method name, and then you give it the arguments. So maybe I just want to give it 10 and 20. Okay. Now, if I just do that, I'm not going to see anything. Right? Nothing happened. There are no print statements. So what I want to do is I want to get the answer in a variable. Okay? I can call it answer, I can call it sum, I can call it whatever I want. But basically I'm saying go call add with 10 and 20, and then add with 10 and 20 is going to get called. 10 and 20 are going to get added, and the answer is 30. So this line now gets converted to return 30. For example, so now the 30 gets replaced here. So this whole call now is equivalent to the number 30. And now I say int sum equal to 30. So now sum is equal to 30. Now what is it that I want to do with sum? Maybe I want to print it out. So here if I say I want you to print me the sum, I will get the 30 printed out. I could have also said system.out.println add 10, 20. So I really don't have to save the answer in a variable if I don't want to. Just know that when I call this, I'm going to just put extra spaces so you can see it. When I call this method, it's going to get replaced with whatever value is being returned. So if this method returns 30, now the code, this line of code is equivalent to system.out.println 30. Okay, so when you call a method and it returns something, this call is being replaced with the value that it's being returned. And we can have methods that return anything. I can have, you know, a method called getName, and you know, maybe it deals with scanner. New scanner system.in turn s.nextLine. You know, this is of course bad code because I'm supposed to ask the user. And let's import our scanner really quickly. So import java.util.scanner. Let's actually fix it. We don't want to write bad code. Let's come and ask him here. System.out.println. Enter your name. Okay. So now when this method returns a string and I want to call it, for example, I can say print welcome, and I can call print welcome with get name. Here what I'm doing is I'm calling get name. Get name is going to go ask the user for the name, grab what the user typed, and return it. And now whatever the user types is going to kind of get replaced here. So get name will get replaced with what the user typed. And then I'm calling print welcome with that name. And so I should get welcome with the name the user entered. Let's try that. So it says enter your name. My name is Horse, and it says welcome Horse. Okay. So when you have a method that returns something, you can save it in a variable if you wanted to. You could print it. If you wanted to, you can pass it into another method. It doesn't matter what you do with it, as long as, you know, whatever you're doing with it is possible. So here is an example with the add method. We're doing two things with the add method. One time we're saving the answer in a variable like we did, and the other time we're saving the answer, we're passing the answer to the println so it gets printed. And both of them will display the same answer for us. Now, we can have methods that return anything, like we said. It can be an int, a string. It can also be a Boolean. When you have a method that returns a Boolean, the nice thing about methods that return a Boolean is that you can stick it in an if statement. So here I'm asking the user for a number. I'm reading it in using k.nextInt, and I'm asking, is it valid? That value, is it valid? So is valid is going to check. If the number is between 1 and 10, it's going to say it's true. So valid is going to be true. And at the beginning, we set valid to false. So at the beginning, we're assuming the number is invalid. And then we check, is it between 1 and 100? It is. We say valid is true and return valid. So here, valid is going to be either true if it's between 1 and 100, or false if it wasn't. So we're returning a Boolean. Because we're returning a Boolean, we can stick it inside of an if, because the if statement says you need to give me something that evaluates to true or false, a Boolean expression, right? And so anywhere you can put a value, you can put a call to a method that returns that value. The last thing we want to talk about is overloading methods. Overloading methods just means using the same method name, but in different ways. For example, here I have a method doStuff that takes 2 ints and returns an int. I have another doStuff that takes 3 ints. This doStuff takes 2 doubles. And so depending on what you call the method with, like here I'm calling doStuff with 10, 2, it's going to call the version that takes the 2 ints, and it's going to do the printing. If I call doStuff with 3 ints, it's going to call this version of the method that says multiplying. If I call doStuff with a double, and here it's an int, so it's going to match the double one, it's going to do the division. So you can use the same method name as long as you pass different number of arguments. So let me show you an example of that. We kind of did it already when we did the print welcome. Here, what we did was we overloaded the print welcome. We said, I want you to write me a print welcome that takes no arguments, and I want you to write me a print welcome that takes a string. This is an example of an overloading a message. You're using the same method name, but with different arguments. Now, I want you to be careful because you cannot have 2 methods that have the same name and the same arguments, but return something else. So if I try doing this, this is not going to work. Why? Because it's ambiguous. The way I call a method, if I want to call a method, I'm going to say print welcome. And then next to the parentheses, I'm going to either leave empty parentheses if I want to call this method, or I'm going to give it a string if I want to call this version of the method. Now, if I give it a string, how will it know which one it should call? The one on line 75 or the one on line 80? It's not going to know. So for overloading to work, the method name is the same, but also the number of arguments are different, or the types are different. So here I can say string name and let's say int, I don't know, h. That'll work because they're different number of arguments. Or they're the same number of arguments, but they're different. Okay, so here this is taking a string, that's taking an int. It's not going to be ambiguous when I call print welcome with cat. It's not the same as print welcome with 20. So overloading just says that you can have methods with the same name as long as their arguments are different. There's a way for the Java compiler to determine which method you are going to call. Okay, we call this the signature of the method. The name, what it's taking as input, and the return, we call that the signature. So we want the signatures to be different. Now for today's classwork, what I want you to do is I want you to go in order. You're going to start by writing a method called showCharacter. This method is going to take a string as input and a position, and the position is a number. So here it's an int position. Okay. And what it's going to do, it's going to write out to the screen the character at the position. So if you give it like cat and 0, it's going to write that the character at location 0 is C. If you give it dog and 1, it's going to say, well, the second letter location 1 is an O. So that's the purpose of this method. Now, here I didn't tell you to return anything. So this should be a void method because I didn't ask you to return anything. It's just printing. In main, you are going to ask the user for a string. You're going to ask the user for a position, and you're going to call showCharacter on that string with the position. So if the user says cat and 0, you know, showCharacter will eventually print out the C. Now, what you want to do before you call showCharacter is make sure that the position is valid. So if someone says cat and position -20, you should tell them, no, it's invalid. Try again. So you're going to keep prompting the user for a valid position. So you're going to say invalid, try again, enter another position. If the user says, you know, cat and location position 5, you're going to again say it's invalid because cat can only have positions 0, 1, and 2. So you're going to have to make sure that the position the user enters is valid. And if it's invalid, use a while loop to keep asking them for a valid position. Once you're done, test your code in NetBeans and on HackerRank.